Serena Williams, literally one of the greatest athletes alive, revealed that she's on a GLP-1 drug via Roe telehealth for postpartum weight loss. She's still training hours and hours a day. So no doubt she also has a diet that supports that. And she had felt like her weight loss had plateaued to a point. So with GLP-1 and with her exercise regimen, she lost about 31 pounds. And she's now a brand ambassador for Roe in their national campaigns. Although worth noting that her husband, Alexis Ohanian, is an investor in Roe. So there is that. And I think when she announced this, I think one, props to her for willing to be honest about it, especially because it's her.
That's part of her brand, though. I feel like she's always been very transparent about things that have affected her, including like her pregnancy, her birth story where she almost died. So
Yeah.
she's been very open about that, her postpartum troubles afterwards, like mentally. So I like that it fits with her being open about like what's going on in her life.
Totally, totally. With this news, I think a lot of people were also saying and even thinking to themselves, like, if even Serena Williams can't outrun body goals or certain societal expectations, even, what about the rest of us?
Hmm.
And I guess one thing I kind of see that as heartening in the
Hmm.
sense of that there are so many women, especially middle-aged women, who have found like it's been really hard to reach certain body goals. Like a lot
Hmm.
of middle-aged women are finding like no matter how hard they train, that they can't build more muscle, and or they can't lose their belly fat, whatever it is. So I think it's heartening in that it really validates like no, sometimes like it's not that you're doing it wrong.
Hmm.
Like it's not because you only ate 110 grams of protein instead of 115 grams yesterday.
But then also, like, what is the actual food doing that like we're eating, right? Like is it just that the specific foods that we're eating have more calories, or like we're not counting calories right, or is it that there's more in the food that could be taken out that would help all of us across society be healthy,
Mhm.
instead of leaving it to okay, you have to decide, or you have to eat the salad instead of eating, something more filling, that has like more calories or whatever. So I like
Yeah.
that it is bringing that out and questioning that, like, it's not just you.
I do think those factors that you've said, I do think it's a little bit of all of that.
Mhm.
So one thing that made me curious was I really wanted to understand how do GLP-1 drugs work, right? Because I had heard plenty of times that one thing it does is it eliminates food noise. So for people who are thinking like they want like always wanting to snack, eat, whatever, it eliminates that noise. So that's part of it though. But the other thing is that it really does change things metabolically for the person taking the drug. Like it helps slow down digestion, which helps you stay fuller longer. But then also it's is helping to make sure that your blood glucose levels don't spike. So it's not even just that people are able to eat less as a result of taking GLP-1 drugs. It's also that their bodies are reacting differently to the food that they're taking in. So it is also worth noting that. And I think the whole food noise thing is I remember having heard this was a couple years ago, I think, when right before GLP-1 drugs became more readily accessible. But right before that researchers were starting to think that like have we like cured addiction? Like they've been wondering, and I think they were that was an open question because it isn't just food noise. Like I think that people who are maybe always craving alcohol, for instance, that alcohol noise has helped to reduce as well. So it's kind of a bigger thing than just food.
And just a few points I'd like to add is just like, speaking of like the elephant in the room, how authentic is it if her husband is like on the board of Roe, is an investor in Roe, and now she's a spokesperson for Roe, right? Which is Roe is, I think, Monjaro, and the competitor is Ozempic, right? For me, I always have to see, okay, how real is this? Is it coming from? Would you believe it compromises the authenticity of the claim, or do you think there's enough in the fact that it is giving a permission slip to people that, like, it is hard. You need help. We're all the same. It's not just you, or it's not just your, say, project.
I don't necessarily think that means conflict, but I do think people should call it out. Like I do think people should be very aware of her connections to the company. And I also think that she and the company, like need to be very mindful of how they're talking about these things. In particular, Roe, they need to be very mindful about the way they're going to be talking about Serena's story. I think just having worked on the side of like wellness and fitness for a while, I know that sometimes you really do happen to get this kind of perfect story of, oh, we have the ideal spokesperson who used our product. Like, we got to use this. I've seen that enough times where I can believe it.
That's kind of what I think happened. The connection is the point, right? So to me, if Serena is talking to her husband, Alexis, and saying, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this. I can't get my weight down, even though I'm working out, even though I'm doing all this stuff. He knows how intense she like works out. And he's like, hey, I just invested in this company that has like the GLP-1, weight loss drug. Maybe you should try it out. And I would go with that company because my husband is referring me to the company that he just invested in, who does due diligence on the companies he invests in, right? So I'm more likely to trust that company than me going out and searching for like another one that I know would love for me to be their spokesperson, right? This is like, I'm cutting that out. I know there's no marketing coming into it. There's no like filler. So it's like she's kind of approaching it a little bit more anonymously than she would if she was going as me, Serena Williams, is like going to test out these other products that would probably do the same thing, but I'm gonna go with this one. So that's kind of how I saw it. And obviously it's right for people to like call that out.
Totally.
But then also like she didn't have to tell us. She didn't have to tell us that she was doing this. I can assure you that there's a lot of celebrities out there that are doing the same thing and aren't telling us about that, So the fact that she is telling us about it means that she does want to take us with her on that journey. So I'm more willing to like, believe her.
The other question I'd like to get your opinion on this is that there is a contradiction here, right? We've been talking about imperfection all along and people's move towards imperfection. But these drugs are going back into a trend towards perfection. And people wanting to have the perfect body and wanting to have the perfect appearance. So where does these fit? The trend of imperfection versus perfection. And one last point just to put into it is that not to get the podcast banned, but if you remember COVID, right? A lot of people were like saying, I'm not putting that vaccine into my body. It's not been tested properly. These same people are probably queuing up for GLP-1s and hooking it up right away because they can lose 1 pound, right? So there's a few contradictions going on here.
Yeah. Well, I will say she is a millennial. We're still going for that perfect aesthetic. No. But really, yeah, I mean, that's always going to be like the thing, right? She is a celebrity. She is like in the spotlight a little bit more. So it makes sense that she would want her body to be more perfect. But that's a good point, Martin.
I'm just wondering if it's like a really good message for young teenage girls, like that this is something they should be considering when someone like this famous is already considering it.
Oh, I mean, but that happens all the time, right? The beauty standards for teenage girls are always impossible. I mean, Sydney Sweeney, the whole point of her saying her jeans commercial was to say that she has great genes because she's, a blonde hair, blue-eyed, like, white girl with like good tits and, a skinny frame. So that's still out there, and then now I think what this is doing is saying that like if you can't achieve that goal, it's not necessarily your fault.
The other thing is I read that these drugs also are not just for weight loss, that they remove all addictions potentially.
Right.
So like if you're addicted to smoking or alcohol, that there's gambling, yes, there's a chance that they can also remove that addiction, which I think is
that's the thing that I was saying earlier, that like right before the drug became more accessible to people, there was the open question of have we cured addiction?
Yeah,
because it's that maybe it addresses the part of your brain that thinks I want this, I want this, I want this.
Yeah, we'll have to see, right? I think they're starting to do studies on that. I think it ended up being one of those like secondary side effects that they weren't really planning for. And so people are like calling this like, is this an actual miracle drug? Because like what downsides are there to it?
Well, one downstream effect is going to be our food or our food products. So the other thing that I saw was somebody called out that snack makers are now trying to make GLP-1 resistant foods. That made alarm bells go off of my head because I already kind of knew, I'm like, what do you mean resistant? It's not that they're trying to make foods that resist the chemical effects of GLP-1. They're trying to focus or even just reposition some of their products around high protein and high fiber. They're also trying to make foods that are even lower in sugar, because some of the effects of being on GLP-1 drugs is that some foods that are rich or really creamy or really sugary, it tastes too sugary and it tastes too rich. So now manufacturers are trying to make foods that actually are lower in sugar.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting though, right? Because maybe that means that food in general is going to become a little healthier if it has more fiber and it has more protein and less sugar. That will affect all of us.
I think we're all obsessed with protein, and that is one thing, but we also need more fiber, and people aren't eating enough of that. And best way to get fiber ultimately is eating a lot of fruits and vegetables.
That's super interesting. So you're saying there's a whole new category of say food labeling, because my friend actually is on it, right? And he's been doing it for about 6 months, and he's transformed himself. He looks like a totally different person. He struggled with his weight for a long time. And one of the things he told me was that he feels nauseous around certain food types. And he wasn't really sure what the food types were. And what you're saying is that maybe that if food manufacturers are labeling food, that becomes a whole new category in supermarkets.
Yeah. They're already starting to, I think maybe the existing products that actually are higher in protein and fiber and lower in sugar, they are changing the messaging there to make that more upfront. But then they're also trying to now create new recipes that will appeal to people who are on those drugs in a way that's okay, sugary foods don't taste good to you and you don't want them. Now we're going to try to make foods that are less sugary tasting. There is going to be a big opportunity for trainers and wellness coaches who will be helping their clients focus on building lean muscle mass, who will be reminding their clients hey, you really do need to get a lot more protein now. You really do need to lift heavier weights.
So someone, I think, needs to start the GLP-1 sing-along to
Yeah,
K-pop,
workout.
demon.
The soul cycle,
Yeah.
There you go. Combine everything. Yeah. Do a GLP-1 soul cycle with K-pop music playing music.
With Dubai chocolate.
Yeah, afterwards. Yeah, right.
Dubai chocolate's going to have a low sugar version that is
Yeah,
high.
Exactly.
Well, maybe it does have protein because of the pistachio.
There you go.
There goes the pistachio market.